Hello friends, this is Cara-Renee with B.Reborn Art and Healing, coming to you with my Sunday's Art of Truth for Sunday, October the 1st. I cannot believe it is already October. Not my favorite month. September and October are challenging months for me. And so I have all these things bubbling up in my soul that is kind of causing me to process some deeper things and look at some decisions and things like that. And I wanted to create something around that, but then I was thinking, like, what is in my way? Like, sometimes there's not a direct path from what we feel inside to what we want, how we want to express that. And I saw this quote on Facebook from Pablo Picasso that says, "Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life." And this just spoke to me, and it spoke to me because this is my pathway. This is my doorway into healing. This creativity, especially in the mixed media realm, is my connection to my own soul. It is my connection to myself. It gets me to where I want to be in terms of moving kind of from a hard place to a more satisfied place, a more healed place, a place where I can think clearly. Haven't been thinking very clearly lately. And so I thought, I'm just going to dive in and create around this quote. So this will be a voiceover. I'm just going to introduce you to the products and a kind of a general idea of what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to switch to the voiceover because, again, as I mentioned in every mixed media video, my mixed media tends to just be so intuitive that it just kind of goes in all different directions, and I don't want to make it feel like that for you. So I will be doing a voiceover after I do the intro, and you guys can watch the process, and I'll be explaining that then after the fact. So this is the quote that we're going to be using. I did print it on a piece of tissue paper. I left it attached and glued on the bottom just because I don't want it to get lost. There is a video on my channel of how to print on tissue paper. I'll try to link it in the supply list over on my blog and in the video description if I remember. I'm going to do my best to remember that. So it's a really great way to get words down on a project without actually, like, who can write like that? I mean, I have pretty good penmanship, but I can't write like that. So, especially if I'm under the gun. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to set that aside because I don't want it to get messed up. And I've got, as usual, I've got a variety of brushes, a couple of palette knives. I've got some fluid acrylics in sap green hue, transparent yellow oxide, and manganese blue hue. This feels a little bit bold, but I want to be able to bring out the blues in this image. So let me talk about the image a second. So this is, I just did a search on Pixabay. Pixabay is a website where you can get photos and they are copyright free. All that they ask is that they like you to credit the creator, and so I will make sure that I credit the creator and give a link. But I just Googled, I didn't Google, I searched just art, and this is what I got. So it's this beautiful watercolor picture, a couple of beautiful colors of watercolor, this kind of rusty hinge, and some paintbrushes, and it just spoke to me like instantly. I was like, this is the one I need to do. And because my first passion is watercolor, it is my favorite medium, although it is a harder medium for me to master, and so I tend to go towards other things because it's easier, and this doesn't yield as instant results for me because I'm not an expert at it. I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not an expert. So anyway, I thought I would create around this with that quote being the message. I also pulled a couple of stencils that we'll be using to do some texture. You might be familiar with these. I've used them in some of my mixed media paper, as well as I believe I use this in, can't remember if I used this in the Mixed Media 101. No, I don't think I did. But we've used it on camera. So this is a Sean Petit stencil, and then we've got this one that's just this cute little doily I thought would be pretty. I pulled some gold polka dot tissue paper. I thought that would be fun to accent. I've got some background papers. As you know, I do love to collage behind this. And so I've got all of these, and then one of the things that I mentioned before is I struggle to not lose a space for my quote. So I do all this beautiful mixed media work and all this texture, and then I have no place for this to stand out. So I'm going to use a piece of, I'm going to put this in some area where it's going to retain this background so that I don't lose it. So that's the idea there. So hopefully I won't get too carried away and lose track of that. The other thing that's different today, which I'm kind of disappointed about, is I have this, I'm out of my Liquitex Fluid Matte Medium. I have this golden matte medium, but I can't get the jar open, like, to save my life. And I know it only has a little bit in it. So I'm going to try a different one. And this is one that I used when I was teaching some workshops, mixed media workshops. So I'm hoping that this is going to be thin enough to get my papers down. I'm hoping that it's going to be okay. I probably have enough fluid matte medium when I get to the tissue paper part, because that's pretty critical. So I'm going to try that. I've got my US Art Supply modeling paste. Again, I use this as an example on my Mixed Media 101 video, where we did some work with modeling paste or texture paste, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to use this because I really liked the results. I also have my satin glazing medium from Golden, and I forgot to let me grab my raw umber, because we're probably going to need that if we decide to do a wash or a glaze. I've got my gesso in case I want to use that. And I think that's it. We're going to keep it a little bit more simple. I'm not going to go into the really majorly textured background here. I'm going to keep it a little bit simpler. So I've clipped these down. I put some parchment paper in between just to keep that nice and keep the pages behind it clean. But I'm going to go ahead and remove them now, because we're going to need to have access to that. So I'm going to start by putting some paper down. So just as a little intro into the use of matte medium and papers on a paper like this. So if I was going to put like direct paint on this surface without any background papers, without collaging, I would probably gesso it, just because the gesso again creates an extra layer. It creates a surface that it has what they call tooth, which allows your mediums to kind of adhere to it and stick to it. So, but because I'm going to be putting papers down, I don't need to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and stop yakking and go to the voiceover, and I hope that you enjoy the video, and I will see you on the other side. So we're going to start by putting on the collage papers. I am using that matte medium that I showed you a little bit ago. That is from Daler and Rowney. I will say that it is an awesome matte medium. I would not use it again for this process of adhering papers like this. As you can see, I am struggling a little bit with the bottle. I only used this when I was doing some teaching, and it's been stored since then. So I'm going to go ahead and speed through the process of tearing these papers up. I'm using my tear ruler because I really like that rough edge, even though it doesn't really matter, because in this case it doesn't show, but that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to speed through that, and then we will start adhering the papers again with that matte medium. My preferred matte medium is the Liquitex Fluid Matte Medium. And what I was doing there was showing you that I needed to, as I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, I wanted to make sure that I retained a paper space for my quote to go on. And so that's what that small piece of paper is that you see there. So I don't bring that in until the very end, but I will point that out as well. So here I was talking about also, I can't remember if I talked about it in the intro or not, I apologize. I'm not gessoing these papers because, yeah, I think I did talk about it, because we are putting papers all over both of these pages. So this is a double spread in my Arteza Mixed Media Journal. Unfortunately, I don't know where to get them anymore. I have tried and cannot locate them. I will see if I can, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to. But any kind of mixed media journal will work for you. They're fairly thick pages, really great to work on. So I'm just putting the matte medium everywhere on this 2 pages, just because I know I'm going to need it everywhere, and I'll come in with more as needed as we move through. I'm going to speed through this process as well, because you've seen me many times do collaging. I don't think I take it out completely, but I will speed up the video just for the sake of time. If that is not the case, we'll find out here in a few minutes. I recorded the video yesterday, and I'm trying to edit out. It was really long, and it was in 3 pieces, and so I am editing it today, and that means I have to kind of tap into my memory to see what I was doing at the time that I am speaking to here. So, and as usual, I do select a few pieces of each of the papers that I've chosen. That just helps to bring continuity to a project, even though in mixed media, and in this case, most of that paper gets covered over, but whatever peeks through, I want it to be what I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and let you see that process, because working in 3s is really artistically pleasing to the eye of the person that's viewing it, in terms of like a final finished piece, or a journal spread especially, because your eyes are going to travel in a particular pattern through this kind of landscape of the 2 pages. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn some music on here while you watch the collaging process. Also, as you can see here, I am again spreading out those patterns, because in another kind of project where we didn't lose so much of the background, as you probably noticed in the photo at the beginning, it still is a good practice just to kind of be thinking that way, and doing things in sets of 3, groups of 3, and that includes the collage paper. Now this last one that I'm putting down, I only had 2 pieces of that, but I knew that the most of that was going to be covered over. But rather than try to think about how much space my main picture was going to take, I just decided to cover most of the pages with the paper. I'm just looking there for another piece for that upper right hand corner. I do need to go in, as you'll see in a moment, and put another piece kind of off to the left, because my picture, I wanted to make sure that the picture would cover it, and it was easier again to just not have to think about that too much, and just kind of cover it and then go from there. So, and I do apologize, I'm looking at that terrible arm in this video again, and I thought it was looking so much better, but when I look at it on the video, it's horrendous. As I mentioned in a previous video, I had, I think, an allergic reaction to some bug bites kind of towards the end of August, so it's already been a month, and I'm still healing, and they're still problematic, so I know it's quite unsightly, so forgive me for that. So now I'm just getting the main image, getting it ready here. I believe I'm going to dry it here, because I had printed it out on my printer not too long before I started the process here, and hitting it with the heat tool does set that ink, at least the ink that is in my printer. I have an inkjet printer, and that typically does the trick. I do still get a little bit of bleeding, but it is better than not having kind of dried it really quick with the heat tool. So just putting that extra piece that I mentioned before, just wanting to make sure that I don't have any of that blank page poking through behind my image. And then I just folded that in half, and I'm putting the fold into the fold of the journal spread so that it is even on both pages, which is a really nifty, easy way to do that. And we do get a little bit of bleed here, and you'll see me kind of going through, as I continue through the process, I will be kind of wiping up some of that color where I don't want it, especially in the white of the picture where those paint brushes are. I didn't want that to look, I didn't want it to have color there that I didn't want. So there was still some bleeding, but not nearly as much as there would have been. And I just adored this journal, or I mean this picture, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, and it is the focal point of this spread, and it is the focal thought and inspiration for the blog writing for the Sunday's Art of Truth. And that is again for October the 1st, and you'll be able to see that on the channel. And all of the supplies that I use, which is not much, there's mostly mixed media supplies, you can find over on my blog, and a link to the blog is always in the description box. So you can head on over, and you can see a lot of close-up photos that you won't see on YouTube or on Facebook. If you want to see a little bit more of the close-ups of this incredible texture that we create, it's just absolutely stunning. So just finishing up, wiping. I like to have I like to have either those streaks go up and down or side to side so that they just don't look as bad when it dries, even though all of this gets covered up other than the picture there. So I'm having a little bit of trouble with my software. I thought it was fixed, and so it glitched there, and I do apologize for that. It looks like I need to go back to an older process that I was doing. I did an update and it didn't fix it, so I should have probably tested that. I sort of tested it, but not enough. So here I'm going in with my crackle paint, even though I did not intend to really clutter this up with a lot of texture. But again, as I mentioned, the reason for this piece and this blog is that I was really, I'm dealing with a lot of kind of deep things and hard emotional things right now. But I just didn't, it's not something that I can put out there. Like, I can't pour my soul out in that way. And so I thought, what do I do personally to work through that? And what I do is art. So that's why I wanted to create this piece. So I lost my train of thought there. I apologize. As I'm watching the video trying to figure out what I'm doing here, this is that piece of paper that I was talking about that I wanted to have there to reserve for the quote that we chose, which is that one by Pablo Picasso that says, "Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life." And so here again, I sped this up. I'm just applying that crackle paint here and there in pretty typical fashion for me, kind of going around that focal image, going up into the image a little bit in places. And then I will be coming in with some stenciling here in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and let that dry, and I let it dry for quite a while, a couple of hours, and then we're going to come in now with the stenciling as I showed in the beginning. And isn't that image just beautiful? It's watercolor, and that's my passion, so it really spoke to me, like, from that just really creative space that I find myself in. So it was really really nice to find that image. It was perfect for what I'm wanting to say and what you'll be able to read again over on the blog. I am using the modeling paste that is from US Art Supply. This is the modeling paste that I used, that I really was surprised by how much I liked it when I did the Mixed Media 101 episode 1 video, and it worked like a charm. Like, it is amazing modeling paste and very affordable. It's quite thick. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this stencil image on both sides of the pages, and I am going to speed that up here in a few moments and let you just finish watching that. You guys have seen me do that before, and so I just thought I would shorten the video a little bit and let you just watch. At least I thought I sped it up. Maybe it's a little bit ahead. Again, my software is being very strange, and this first round of editing took me about 2 hours. So I'm not gonna fix anything else. So again, perfection is not at play, and so I hope that it doesn't cause things to be too disjointed or hard to follow. So I know that for many of you watching, mixed media is not your main artistic focus. So I know that it can be a little bit confusing, and so I hope that in the end it makes sense as I explain as we walk through this. So again, oh, here's where I sped it up. So speeding up this part of just laying that same stencil on the right hand side of the page, and then I'm going to come in with that doily stencil here in a moment. I'm going to use that in some of the smaller spaces. I was going to try to use some of the edges of the large stencil, but it was not going to work. And these circles as part of this kind of doily, it reminds me of a doily anyway, I thought would be perfect in the spaces that I had left, because it's kind of small and it's a circular bit of texture, which I think really added to the piece in the end. So again, just going around in all the places that I didn't hit with the other stencil. And as this unfolded, I found myself really enthralled by the way that the texture was kind of wrapping around this image, and it made me it just really inspired me more about kind of that thought process around art washes the soul, washes away the things of this world from our soul, and it kind of surrounded by this beauty. And as the color gets applied, you're going to see what I mean. So there, I'm just showing you a close-up and then wiping a little bit of that extra wet modeling paste away from the edges of the paper. But it's just gorgeous. And when this is completely dry, which I did let it dry overnight, which was really a good idea, it dried much different than some of my other ones that I rushed through, so I was really impressed. I'm going to show you right now another shot of that. And again, this is the next day, and the crackle is just incredible, and I was certain then that all of my texture had dried. All that stenciling was nice and hard and was not going to be moved by any wet mediums that I am going to apply. But look at those cracks, and that texture is just absolutely, I just can't create without this crackle paint. It is like my favorite medium of all time. I really tried not to. I was telling myself, no, you don't need to use it. But you know, I have to follow my heart. You know, that's the artistic process, is doing what you feel inspired to do. So we're going to come in with some paints now and kind of get some color down. I was a little undecided at this point. I pulled this, I'm sorry, I already threw this in the garbage by the time I'm doing the voiceover, but it was an oxide color in the golden fluid acrylics, and it actually was completely dried up in the bottle. And so I just grabbed another item. I grabbed the high flow, golden high flow in transparent yellow iron oxide. It's a really great yellow that is just kind of, well, it's transparent, so it flows well, and it allows you to still see what's underneath. If this wasn't all kind of covered up with texture, that would make more sense. But some of those techniques I will be coming back to in the Mixed Media 101 series. I will be demonstrating how each of these products is used, and on different surfaces, and on, you know, with different backgrounds and things like that. So here I still mapping out what I want that to look like, because I've never done it before. I've taught before, but I've never done a video series. So I'm working hard at making that be exactly what you guys are asking for and what is going to be the most useful. So here I'm just using my brush and spreading out that that yellow iron oxide in the high flow acrylic. And I do have some water off to the side there that I'm dipping, that I mixed with the paint on my parchment paper. Unfortunately, you cannot see that because there's just not enough room on camera. Spritzing that with a little bit of water, and I will be coming in with a couple of other colors, which I'll talk about as we move along. So this is the sap green hue. This is also from Golden Fluid Acrylic, and it is apparently new. I must have run out of the old one, and the little paper things can be just such a booger because it's got two layers. It's got paper and it's got plastic, and it's just like, oh my goodness gracious. So difficult to get off. I try to do that before I start a video, but I didn't realize that it had not been opened. So I'm going to take that sap green hue as well, and I'm going to kind of drop it here and there around the spread, and then I will use some water and spread it out. I really wanted to capture all of the colors that are in the picture without taking away from the focal image, which is that picture. So I think it turned out really, really great in the end. And again, the texture that's built up here around it, as well as the colors that were applied, reminded me of like a secret garden. And I thought, wow, how interesting that that picture is a door. It's a watercolor door with a rusty hinge. And I thought, wow, you know, a door in a secret garden, you know, a safe place, all of those things, which you can read more about that over on the blog if you're interested in kind of where my creativity was taking me and where my processes inside were leading the way in creating this this journal spread. So again, using my brush and just kind of spreading out that sap green hue. It's a very, very it's a very rich color. I really like it. It's one of my favorites because it's very earthy. It doesn't look like a spring green. It's very earthy, like the forest, and very natural to me. I really enjoy. I like sap green in pretty much any medium, including watercolor. So just going to let you watch here and set this to music as I continue to spread this out. I will also be coming in with Golden Fluid Acrylic in manganese blue. It was a little bit more vibrant than I wanted for this project, but in the end it was just enough, and it just sort of peeks through just in little bits here and there in the final piece. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the music on for you. It's kind of hard to tell on camera how blue that really is. It is actually almost exactly the color of that little paint palette that you see in the picture, the blue one. But the camera here is not picking it up very well. I don't know if that's just the software. It might look a little bit different on the other side. We'll see. I did get a little bit more texture up into that picture than I wanted there by the paintbrushes, which gave me a headache through the entire project. But again, you know, I make it work. I just keep working it until I'm satisfied with the result. And I was very, very satisfied. I'm never disappointed. I mean, sometimes I'm like, oh, that wasn't really what I was going after. But in the end, I just keep working it and I end up loving it, and it ends up actually meeting the need more than what I had originally had in my mind. So this is already looking like a garden, in my opinion, a secret garden. So coming in with a little bit more of that transparent yellow iron oxide from Golden. And this is a product, if you guys can swing it and you're interested in playing with mixed media, it is, you know, kind of out of the box. It can be a little spendy, but it lasts forever. Like I've never repurchased these high flow acrylics. I mean, they're amazing, and it doesn't take much to get to use for your project, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Stumbling over that a little bit. So I'm just going to continue to work this until I get the result that I want. Kind of part of the process is just kind of a dance that you do where you're just working it, and then you're like, oh, well, it needs a little bit of something here, it needs a little less of that here. And so that's what you're going to be watching me do here until I'm done with the color. Enjoy. So here in a moment, we're going to go ahead and dry that before we go on to the next step. Nice and dry and ready for whatever is coming. I honestly don't remember. Oh, I remember now. We're going to do a glaze. Surprise, surprise. So if you've been watching my channel and watching any of my mixed media techniques, you'll know that I can't really do a project without doing a raw umber glaze, especially if I'm using the crackle paint, because what it does is it creates this solution. This is the fluid acrylic and raw umber and glazing medium, and what this allows is for you to put this concoction on your spread by brush, and then you wipe it off with a baby wipe or a wet paper towel or whatever it is that you have, and it leaves that brown in all of the crevices of the cracks of that crackle paint, as well as in the other texture that is created by the stencils and the modeling paste. So it's really, really great. And I always say this because I know if you've never seen this before, you're like, what the heck are you doing? You're ruining your journal page. But you can see there that by applying it and then just wiping it up with a baby wipe, which is what I use, I'm leaving that brown, that dark, in the places that I want it to be. And I will be showing you a little bit later a close-up of that blank piece of paper that's there off to the right that the quote is going to go on, because I want to show you what all that fluid and liquid did, and it was just absolutely stunning, and I loved it. It kind of aged the paper, and it was beautiful. So just jumping again, as you can see, over to the other side. And this is the part I didn't like, where I had to go up into that picture because I had to get something on that texture that I left there that I wish that I didn't have there. But again, it always works out in the end, and it was beautiful. So again, just wiping that side up as well. I just love a glaze. I love a glaze. In the Mixed Media 101 series, I will be showing you the difference between a glaze and a wash of acrylic paint and those kinds of things, because if you do a wash, you don't need any extra supplies, like you don't need the glazing medium as such. But I don't want to get too far into that. I'm just kind of thinking about it as I'm doing the voiceover and getting some ideas about what I can bring to you next that's going to be most useful. So I'm going to go ahead and dry that, and we are nice and dry. And I'm just going to hold that up for you guys to see that beautiful texture. Look at that. I love the tones that were left. The blue is there, but it's not predominant. So there's that paper that we're going to put the quote on. See that darker kind of green color? That is actually probably the liquid from the glue, because before I applied any paint to the project, that was already changing. That paper was changing, and I love what it did. I love what it looked like in the end. I will try to get a close-up of that in the photos at the end so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. But I love how this texture is framing that picture. It just really spoke to me, and I just want to I'm going to come in with some alcohol here, and this also can be really scary. This is just rubbing alcohol in a one of these what do they call it? You know, the heavy duty white paper towels, shop towels. And so if you put a little bit of alcohol on that, you can go over all that texture, and it will actually take a little bit of that paint off and expose and bring back some of the light, because often in my projects I go really dark and it's hard to get back the light because it's acrylic, and it's just, yeah, it's difficult. But this is one way to do that, is just to use a little bit of alcohol. You do have to be careful. You don't want to use too much. But it was just enough, and it allowed me a little bit of more of that light back, as I mentioned, and then I'm going to come in with some other bits on top of that texture that are going to bring out some other elements. So, and there's that close-up of that. I was just so excited about that paper and what it did. So yeah, I just love the texture. I love texture. In case you didn't know. So now we're going to prepare to put on our sentiment. So I'm grabbing my, this is that matte medium that I told you about that I'm just about out of, which I'm going to show you with a sad face. That's all the matte medium I have left, so I need to order some. But I do encourage, in fact, you definitely, if you're applying tissue paper, you need to use fluid matte medium, because the matte medium I was using to put the papers on would just shred this piece of tissue paper. So super important to use the fluid matte medium. You can either, you don't have to get it. There's a Liquitex kind of lower cost fluid matte medium, and then there's more of an artist grade, and then there's a golden brand as well. But I just use the Liquitex fluid matte medium, and it is just fine, and it goes a long way. I haven't had to buy any for a really long time. So I am just cutting a little bit more of that tissue off away from the words, because I want as much of that tissue paper removed as possible, because you always, by doing this, you risk that tissue paper not completely disappearing. The idea is you want it to be become one with the paper, the surface that it's going on. So you can see here I'm using a lot of matte medium. That is really important, because otherwise it will just stand out like a sore thumb. There are ways to work around it, which I'm sure that in our Mixed Media 101 we'll have a chance to talk about what you can do about that. But for now, we're just going to work really hard at getting that to really become one with the paper underneath. And it did. It turned out really good. I didn't see it really working. Here you can see I'm just trying to pull off a lot of that extra matte medium, and even at this point it was still looking like, oh, that's a piece of cutout tissue paper. But once it dried, it was fine, and it didn't even look like it was part of the paper. Now, one could do the same thing by just printing on a piece of paper like that light beige piece of paper, printing right on that, and just making sure that gets retained for somewhere on your page or on your project. So give that a good dry. And as you can see there, hopefully you can see with my hand in the way, it's almost all the lines from that tissue paper are now gone. So I was really pleased with it. I thought it turned out pretty darn good. So I am going to come in now with a little bit of that sap green hue. I'm just putting a little bit out here on my glass mat, and putting some on my finger, and I'm just going to, same thing as I do with the gold and other things, I'm just going to use my finger to kind of skip over all that texture and get some more green while leaving around it a lot of that lighter color. So hopefully you guys can see what I mean there. And I'm going to do that on both pages. And then we're also going to come in with some of the gold. And again, if you've been watching, you probably know that I have a really hard time not using the gold because it's just so beautiful. And it always, it just has a place in my heart, not because I'm all about the gold, but the meaning of gold, the preciousness of gold, what it symbolizes to me is really cool. It reminds me that I'm loved. It reminds me that I'm precious. It reminds me that I'm more valuable than all the money in the world. And we need that kind of truth in our lives, don't we? So there is the part where it looks to me like a secret garden. I love it. Love it. So now the gold. I can't remember if I left it in or not. I did put a lot of gold, and then I felt like it was too much, and so I did come in with a second bit of that sap green hue in certain places. But I guess we'll find out together if I left that in. I didn't really cut anything out of the video other than the dry time. So again, I've told you guys I'm going to leave in all of the fussing, or at least as much of the fussing as I can, because that's just real. Even though I do cut out as much of the dry time and things like that you guys don't need to see, as well as speeding up things like collaging and stuff like that. I try to make it so you can see what I'm doing, and then I can speed up through the rest of that segment. So you can see there on the left, I've got a lot of gold going on. I was kind of going crazy. So I will come in and add some more of that green, as I mentioned. So guys, if you're interested in the inspiration behind this spread, I encourage you to head on over to the blog at B.Rebornart.com. Again, the link to the blog will be in the description box, and a full list of supplies as well as close-up photos can be found over there. And I know a lot of my viewers are not mixed media. They're not into mixed media. I know that a lot of you watch because you find it interesting. If you like the video and you're new to the channel, I would love it if you would hit the subscribe button and the like button. That helps other viewers to be able to see the content that I'm creating. Even if it's not something that you would totally be up your alley. I do a lot of junk journaling and things like that. So there's going to be something on the channel for you. So thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.